Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of Demo Day. Cody and Jake here from First Loop to bring you to the cutting edge of AI. Today I'll be walking you through a couple different voice agent implementations, assuming we have time for both. With that, we can get right into it. So what I'm going to walk through is calling a voice agent that will actually answer over the phone and has access to my GitHub repos via the GitHub MCP server. And to kind of set the stage, my overall question here, why I want to present this demo in the first place, is AI agents are continuing to get more and more powerful, but the bottleneck for them continues to be the context that you provide them. If you could provide more context and more efficiently to more agents, you get a lot more work done. My hypothesis is that we could use voice to handle this context curation and instruction delivery process to be able to get more value out of our agents. So with that, I think having an agent that you can call and provide instructions to, and then it can execute or delegate to a more powerful agent in the back end is potentially a way that we can move forward with this. In addition to the iPhone here, I have a GitHub repo pulled up. It's called my MCP Vault. It's just an exploratory project I have, and I want to call an agent, have it create a new issue in this repo, and then we'll be able to also assign it to Claude Code over the phone if everything works correctly. And that way I can essentially call this agent, create a task, and then delegate it to Claude Code, which is actually doing all of the heavy lifting. This phone call is just for initial context delivery. So with that, I'm going to start the phone call. This is on speaker off of my phone sitting next to my laptop, so hopefully it's audible.
Hey, Jake. Great to hear from you. How can I help you today?
Hey, agent, thank you so much. What repos do you have access to? What tools do you have access to?
Hey, Jake. I've got full access to the MCP Vault GitHub repository and a toolkit to help manage issues, pull requests, branches, workflows, and more.
Cool. That's
Just
awesome. Could you create a new issue for me? I want the issue to be titled add research notes on voice agents. And then in the body of the issue, I want it to say like do research on the new cheaper GPT real-time model and create a new note for it.
the issues created. You can check it out now. Anything else you want to add?
All right, great. So I see you created that issue. Looks like it's issue number 7. Now the next thing I want you to do is tag Claude in a new comment. And so again, what that means is create a new a new comment on the issue, and then do the @ sign, and then Claude. CLAUDE, and then add that as a comment. Once again, the agent is an MVP implementation where it has access to all of the MCP tools. It's probably churning through a lot of context in a slightly expensive way. I think trimming this down could make it a little bit more efficient. Okay, have you gotten that done yet? All right, well, there we go. Now we saw it. Okay, did you finish that? Are you still there? I don't know what happened. Hello? I wonder if it is running locally. No issues. Well, anyways, we'll hang up on that. So, if you want to see, I'm just gonna close the phone there. So yeah, that's demo number 1. Obviously, some rough edges here, but what we were able to do is over the phone, I was able to identify I was in the right GitHub repository, create that issue, and then assign it to Claude. I mean, as we can see now, that actually works, and Claude is now off to the races working on this task. So
Very
pause
cool.
there
And
for questions or interjections.
yeah, in terms of like the tool calling, I know you have to talk back and interrupt, but do you know how tool calling generally works with the real time model? Will it narrate what it's doing in plain English at all? How does that actually, how do tool calls translate, I guess, over these real time models?
Yeah, they work very similarly to just like a regular conversation with an LLM, where there are message types, and you have like a user assistant, and then kind of a miscellaneous or data or tool call type, and the tool call gets injected just back into context of the conversation that way. So
Okay.
it'll send the parameters, it'll get the response back. And then the single piece that's missing here is in my implementation is once you are done with that tool call, you need to like trigger the assistant to generate another response. So like in the equivalent would be in the AI SDK when you set it to have multiple turns in a row and it'll re-ingest the tool call. That's the piece that's missing right here.
Interesting. I think it could also be funny. It has no practical value, but to just put you on hold and play some sort of elevator music while it's churning on
That's funny.
the
That's
tool
actually
calls.
really good.
Because
Uh,
I know, like you know, if I've got a very similar agent setup for creating GitHub issues, and we discussed kind of the platform for it last week. But especially with the GitHub MCP, it can do a fairly substantial number of tool calls before it actually returns to you with any sort
mm,
of intelligible result that especially would make sense over some sort of voice model interaction like this. It might read a bunch of files that might be exploring different parts of the repository, and it doesn't always interject with assistant messages, I guess, between those. So, and part of it is maybe poor optimization on my part, but I've definitely just seen it also churn on tool calls a bit with the GitHub repo, where it will try to request amounts of data that go beyond what the what the model will actually support. So it'll try
yeah.
to return 100,000 tokens or something by
Yeah.
reading every file in a directory, which can just further add to the delay there. But just kind of a fun little idea to add to
Yeah.
the kind of customer service esque uh, assistant experience here over the phone.
Yeah. I like that. The tool calls aren't, I don't think they're async. Like I think the tool call has to finish before it'll continue the
Hmm.
conversation. And the way it's set up though is you can send results into the conversation if you have that manual control. So I do wonder if it also makes sense to um execute the tool call, return an intermediate response back right away, and then finish the tool call out of the core loop and then just push the result back in. So that can improve it
Yeah,
too.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, all right. So this is the first demo. And we're gonna jump into another one that's very similar, but kind of like the next layer more granular. All right. So for the next demo here, I'm gonna show an iOS app that I've been working on that is just a slightly more sophisticated approach to collecting the file context. So it's the same idea. I want to be able to on the go create GitHub issues. The core flow that I use to create GitHub issues is I talk through my problem, I select the files that I need to provide as context, I recap everything with a final reminder of what I'm asking the agent to do, and I send it on its way. What you're seeing here on the screen recording is a iOS app for doing this, but in a using voice and has the capabilities to search against the repo. I just want to call out that we would love to publish this at some point, or once I have a little bit more time to work on it. And the goal is that it's a free app that you can provide your GitHub access token and OpenAI key, and then use it all on the client side. So I'm going to click into this repo and we can see the search results, scratch notes, and then finally selected files. So this really supports that iterative process of kind of selecting the files by just reviewing what's there, making notes of what I want to have happen, and then sending it on its way. So let's jump in.
What specific area or feature are you looking into?
Yeah, could you find my main.ts file, please? And also the LLM calls file? All right. I think those are not quite right. Could you search for main.ts specifically? All right. Well, fun live demo. We got it to select it, even if got on the wrong search results. Um, okay. So I've also selected the chat.tsx and the main.ts file. Could you start adding notes for me now? The first note is we are going to improve how the workflows are created in the plugin. And then say that the workflows are not working correctly and we need to fix the Sparkle function. And then the last one is the generating the workflow templates is also not working correctly. Can we take a look and debug that? All right, great. Could you now create the GitHub issue? All right, that's perfect. So now down here at the bottom, we have this issue preview. I'm going to click create and also create and tag Claude. And so now we've created that issue, get a nice little bug, and we can open that up directly in GitHub. We'll see now in the repo, it's got the title, it's got the synopsis, it's got the selected relevant files, referenced files, and then we have now directly tagged Claude in this as well. So with that, I'm going to switch out of the iPhone view and go to GitHub itself. We can now see that issue here, and we'll actually see Claude in a minute here spin up and start working. So just like that, we're able to use this iOS app to like search, make notes of what I want as like the scaffolding of the issue, and then kind of synthesize it all together and create the final issue before continuing on.
So I'm curious, Jake, what would this flow look like today if you were using kind of the pre-built tools that you have on iOS? Is it even possible to achieve kind of this level of intelligent search, or are you kind of just relying on, I could see how you could maybe use Super Whisper to do just very basic voice transcriptions, dump that into a GitHub issue through the actual GitHub app. I think we've talked about it before, how many
Yeah.
clicks that takes. And then, of course, at that point, you're missing probably a lot of context that is actually specific to the repo. For example, referenced files. There's no way Super Whisper is going to have that. But I'm just curious, like, what were you doing before this? Were you just not doing anything? Can you compare and contrast some of the difficulties previously that motivated this?
Yeah. I think the big one is just not doing this. Um, it's just way more productive to obviously be working at a computer, but there's times where I've been on a walk or like in the hot tub and like, oh, I have an idea I want to get out of my head. I just write it down. Like I'll cover it later. But yeah, the current tools are so close to being good enough, but they're like quite bad. So like this is like my default GitHub homepage, and if you try and click into issues, I can see a list of issues I can create. I guess I can select the repo. I guess we get to like a pretty decent spot here. Um, and let's see what we have for tagging. I can tag other people. I can manually type out a markdown link. That's crazy. Like who's going to do that on their phone? I don't know if there's any way I can select a file in here. So like there's some things that aren't too bad. So from this screen, I could definitely use the microphone transcription and send it on its way. Then I would also have to add the second comment to tag Claude. And there's just like enough rough edges in that workflow that I don't think it makes sense to do currently
Right.
using the GitHub app.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could see being in the hot tub, especially trying to type on your phone too, and dealing with steam, and that just doesn't work. But yeah, I'll say that what I described previously is the workflow that I actually do use on my, in my own day-to-day work when I'm out on a run or whatever, using that Super Whisper transcription, which, that on its own, I'm sure, like, even if you had just one of these real-time models from OpenAI, chatting with that with zero connection to your actual repo, probably do a much better job just out of the box of getting some of the basic, even just technology descriptions right. I
Yeah.
think Super Whisper, I'm almost certain it uses the local model, so it's pretty basic. Misses a lot of uh, just grammar issues,
Yeah.
and it's pretty much just a direct transcription of what you say. But I will say the idea of being able to intelligently link files is huge, and it kind of just streamlines the whole context engineering movement in my mind that's going on right now. Just being able to have an agent kind of on the front end of just organizing things for you feels like a huge productivity boost. Even just like I could imagine a case where maybe you are describing something, but you don't even know exactly which file some of the logic lives in, but maybe you know the general product area. Being able to describe that and being like, oh, I think there's this function. I need you to look that up for me to confirm that it's this file.
Yep.
I feel like that goes such a long way. And having the voice agent available for that, I don't can this voice agent kind of do those more generic lookups, or is it pretty scoped to just file names and things like that?
Right now it is scoped to just file names, and but, like, adding that would be pretty trivial.
Yep.
The way I have search implemented right now is it's actually using GPT-4o Mini, and it's just receiving the list of the file names and then selecting them from there. So I think that's part of
Okay.
why the search results weren't so great in the demo. But really what I would do next is I would just expose it the kind of the well, I guess there's 2 things here. For an on device, like an this iOS device that I want everything to be happening client side, having all of the file content is a little trickier. I mean, you could load all of that if maybe you use the git ignore. Well, there wouldn't be any node. I think you could load all of that. It would be like a little bit intensive. If this was like a desktop app, definitely no problem.
Yep.
But really, if you load all that into memory and then give it the tools to do like the standard grep and just listing files and let it just take that like agentic search approach, I think you could get a ton of mileage out of that with just like a small cheap model iterating quickly in the background.
Interesting. So you're thinking even just bypass the whole GitHub MCP and you really could just sync that repo locally.
Yeah, yeah. I think at that point, yeah, because I think I didn't implement file search with the GitHub MCP on this one, because I think there would just be too much going on. I think you would want it local to just like have it go fast enough. Like I think just the
Yep.
latency of the network request would be too troublesome.
Right. Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about with the agent platform I've been building. Just because so much, as a developer, so many of my agentic workflows involve source code. So being able to pull that all down locally and bypass the MCP or just keep the MCP around for being able to create issues
Yeah,
or even just building a scoped MCP. At a certain point, it just becomes a single API call and maybe an additional one to post a follow up comment for Claude. Although I think you could just make that its own tool call, just tag Claude tool that it just
yeah,
can run and pass in like an issue ID and that's it. But yeah, I'm just constantly thinking about using agents to really beef up context and make issues better and just being able to organize all that context up front before it actually starts doing any sort of work. Because there's other interesting angles to this too that I've been exploring, which is, it's one thing just to have an agent that can collect files and get kind of those baseline things in line. But you could go a step further here and give this agent access to just the web at large so it could actually go out and do research.
yeah,
So maybe you're trying to integrate an API, just being able to chat through what dependencies can we pull in and leverage and being able to chat with Claude like, okay, you found that one, but or not necessarily Claude, whatever the model is, but you found this dependency that we could potentially use, being able to say things like, oh, well, when was that last updated? Because I know you
yeah.
love
That's
to
huge.
pull in dependencies that haven't been published in 6 years, and just being able to go really deep on it at this level before you've even generated the work item to hand off to another agent. It feels like there's so much you could do at this layer.
Yeah. Yeah, the dependency one makes me think of the Express Zod validation library, where like the most recent one was published years ago and it uses Zod 3, but that's what the LLMs know now. So if you say, hey, add validation to this endpoint, it's going to pull in that old library, even though like
Yep.
just the tiniest bit more information would say, don't do this. You either got to roll your own or wait for anyone to be published.
Right. And with these kind of basic issues that we're generating, either just surface level through adding files, or even just if you as the real human sign into GitHub and start typing things out, you kind of have to do all of that research yourself up front, or you're just rolling the dice and you hand this off to Claude and you're just kind of hoping that it is going to do what you want versus being able to really work through all those details up front, while
Yeah.
you're creating the issue and you have more control. And I can see how this whole voice interaction, being able to go back and forth really fast on that could be huge just to collect all those requirements.
Yeah. I wonder too. looking at GitHub, so I think this action is bugged in this repo, as in I probably don't have the token set anymore or something. But like you should almost have like a Claude planner tag. And when you do that, like that kicks up a GitHub workflow, GitHub Actions workflow that takes the initial definition and then does that layer of research. And then if we could
Mm,
push that back into the mobile app, or even just the next time you open it up, like maybe we can say, hey, for issue 64, we set Claude Planner. We're going to check on this in a little bit. Um, you know, have it
yeah.
run and then check it. And if there's more to deliver, like really the voice interaction is just for creating comments, and so you could review it and then go back and forth with the voice agent, create the next comment, and then if it's ready, then tag the full Claude to actually implement the work.
Yeah, I like that, and it leaves kind of a paper trail too of, um, certain steering that you were trying to do against the agent as well, whereas that might just become kind of lost in the voice layer alone. And this kind of contradicts what we talked about last episode of wanting to produce kind of a viable end artifact that captures all those requirements.
Yeah.
But obviously that doesn't always work in some of your requirements along the way, especially if you're directly chatting with these agents along the way, can just become overshadowed or potentially just lost altogether.
Yeah. I think it actually does track with last week. Because I think what would happen, it's like we just care about what comment Claude makes next, and like that's the artifact. I mean, it doesn't live in source
Right.
code, but the artifact would be the comment, and then like the things we disregard are the internals of the GitHub action and like the searching tool calls that it made.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I do like that. I think about when I go and just browse GitHub issues in a dependency, for example, that I'm pulling in because I hit some bug. And I definitely will do like a little bit of a skim through all the discussion, but it kind of is the last comments that really matter in terms of, okay, where did we actually land? What are the owners of this dependency actually planning to do? What are the latest
Yeah.
suggested workarounds? It's always way down at the tail. So that does make sense to me.
Yeah. Hmm. One other comment is I just think GitHub is so cool for all the workflows you can run off of it. I know with the agent platform we were working on, that is all like first party, but I think it's pretty neat that you can just tag Claude and have it get to work, and you just have all of these workflow execution capabilities and schedule running them on a schedule or running them on a specific tag, just available
Yeah.
in the repo.
Yeah, I think you should be able to just queue an action directly off any arbitrary tag like this. For example, Claude Planner. If you go into the GitHub actions on this repo, um, I know that, yeah, you probably want to look at the source code.
Yeah.
So this,
Oh, that's funny. I just don't even have it in this repo. That's why. I wonder how it's still got the eyes emoji. That's funny.
yeah, that's weird. I wonder if GitHub, if their agent is looking for that tag as well. That would be kind of weird. But, you look at this, you can see on issue
Yeah.
comment trigger, and it's doing that inspection. So really you could just replace or duplicate this whole workflow. And I'm kind of curious, do they give any system prompts in this template? I haven't actually
Um.
looked in because this just gets, okay, so it just fires off the Claude code action.
Yo.
That would be, and I guess you can pipe in arguments. Oh, you can give a custom prompt to Claude.
Yep.
So you could really create any arbitrary Claude agent that runs on Claude code here
Yep.
and just specify, hey, you're getting tagged in an issue. Your goal is to kind of research the requirements. And maybe this is where you get that extra layer of investigating into the files, because at this level, it's going to have full access to the
Yep.
repository um, when it gets cloned. Yeah, because it checks out the repository in the first step. So maybe you don't even need to do all that fancy stuff on the actual iOS app. It's kind of nice to be able to have that really fast back and forth, but you could think of this almost like more of a deep research type of action that you fire off. And if you're using any of the fancier OpenAI models, you're not expecting that kind of real time response. If you fire off deep research or whatever,
Yep.
you kind of just let it do its thing, and maybe you can install some sort of webhook to listen for the result of the action within the iOS app. But yeah, this is, I know this wasn't the original intent of the demo here, but it's starting to get the gears turned into my brain
Yeah.
of what is what is all possible here, and the just the native integration with GitHub by building on this agent in an action is, something that you're not going to get as easily building something custom.
Yeah. I think I might have to try that of just creating a default kind of planner workflow. Um, Something I'm kind of curious too is we're now going like way tangent, but like, can we create like a really minimal UI for creating these GitHub actions? Excuse me. Like, obviously, Claude can write this GitHub action, but can we make a minimal UI that allows us to set the right permissions and system prompt and all this stuff, so that way you don't have to fiddle
Yeah.
with it in a GitHub action, and we can just save that and copy it into other repos? Like, I wonder. I bet people would like use that. Like, if we made a way
Oh
that's
yeah.
really easy to clone these GitHub actions, I bet people would be interested in like self-hosting their own agent workflows. Then,
Totally, totally. And it wouldn't be that hard. It becomes just like a simple form that fires off a pull request or something to a repo.
yeah,
And you can customize the tag, you can customize the system prompt, and that's probably all you really have to do. The permission stuff, you know, I guess what does it say? Optional setting that allows Claude to read CI results on PRs. So, maybe that probably isn't even necessary depending on the actual action you're setting up. If you're truly just doing investigation and not posting
yeah,
a PR with the result and just commenting back to that issue. But yeah,
yeah.
there's definitely some cool stuff here.
Yeah, I was talking with somebody, they, they'd asked me if there's a way to use the web fetch and web search tools, which those are now disabled by default in the base Claude code GitHub action. But so you can like add those permissions back in to enable them, which is kind of like the lethal trifecta prompt injection. So you probably don't want that in like a hot sensitive source code. But
Right.
there are some other things too. Like, if you change the prompt and change the permissions, you can get Claude to understand that it actually can create the PRs directly itself instead of doing its like default action, which is creating a link to create the PR. So like by
Oh,
oh, I don't have it here. I'd have to find one, but like by default, normally it says, there's a link here that says create PR. But if you push it enough, it actually will just create the PR itself. Um, so there is some value out of adjusting those tools.
yeah. Interesting. So I guess just looking at this probably got blocked because of
Yeah.
that tool limitation you just mentioned
Oh
for
yeah,
the
that's actually definitely it.
the web.
Yeah, it's gonna be in here somewhere.
Does this just have access to the GitHub MCP? Is that what it's running, or is this all going through the GitHub CLI?
I think it has access to the GitHub. Yeah, so like we can see tool usage. Oh no, this is its prompt. Let's see. Yeah, so its prompt is saying like use the GitHub MCP. So it definitely has that baked in. Um,
Maybe this is custom because it's just GitHub comment update Claude comment. That looks like something that probably isn't in the
yeah.
default GitHub MCP. So they probably just configure their own little tool.
Yep. Yeah, you're definitely right. Yeah, I can see more of the allowed tools here. Um,
Huh.
yeah, so this just you're not allowed to create a PR from this. Like, their default action is to not allow it. And you have to allow it in bash specifically.
Okay. So
So that's
it can create branches and things. Is that the idea here, based
yeah.
on what I'm seeing? Okay.
Yeah, or
And
I
then
think
you open the
yeah, this
PR
can
from
create
that.
branches, but it can't make a PR from the branch back into main or something.
Okay. Yeah, interesting stuff. I do agree with you. This starts to get into really questioning, well, what's the point of running your own kind of containerized instances of Claude when you have this tool kind of at your disposal? I do think having some sort of custom UI just to make it really easy to set this stuff up is kind
Yeah.
of the main blocker, because it's kind of annoying, especially if you want to share all of this stuff across repos, for example. Do you
Yep.
end up just kind of with a GitHub repo that defines all these things, then you add that as a submodule to
Yeah.
your, and then in that case, I don't actually know if GitHub will pick up the workflows within a submodule, or if you have to do extra configuration. So it's kind of just like, operating with source code is kind of annoying, that to scale that all across many different repos
Yep.
and manage tuning it in different repos. But it's obviously got some major plus sides too, just in terms of the power that you kind of get out of the box. And especially for startups or anyone that's got an enterprise GitHub subscription that comes with, I think it comes with like, I'd have to look it up, but it's some absurd number of minutes per month.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
in the
it's,
actions, yeah.
is it like 50,000, or maybe I'm misremembering?
Yeah,
But
I think it's
anyways,
that or something more. I remember looking at it, it's like, wow, this is like I'm sure people use it when they have like really complicated builds, but for
yeah,
any individual developer, even organizations, like there's no reason you couldn't dedicate a significant amount of that towards running agents, especially if given the value you get out of agents. Like just buy more minutes if you need it.
totally, totally. And unless you, honestly, the only really slow builds I've seen are very complex enterprise setups. Like when I was at Microsoft, some of those builds would just take forever because you're pulling in so many different dependencies, especially
Mm.
like microservice builds, or also just Gradle is really slow. But if you are, I think that's just Java in general. It can be a really slow build system. But if you're doing mainly just full stack web stuff, building Next.js apps or Bun apps, really anything kind of adjacent to Node. That stuff's all really fast.
Yep.
And unless you've got hundreds of developers queuing builds every day, you're not even going to, you're barely going to dip into that 50,000 minutes. So
Yeah.
it really is just kind of untapped power there of, it just doesn't make sense to leave it go untouched.
Yep. Yeah, last comment here is now we can see it more clearly in the disallowed tools like web fetch and web
Oh
search is
yeah.
disallowed. So yeah, this one never had a chance of working. That's why it said that the comment said it was blocked. Yeah, so we got blocked on that, and then oh yeah, it just says right here, don't have permission.
Oh yeah. Okay. I guess we could have just looked there from the
Yeah.
start. Um, but cool. So I'm really just excited in general about this approach to context engineering, kind of offloading the burden from humans. And I'm sure there's going to be naysayers out there that say, we're just using large language models for everything. But I think that they're really effective at this type of
Yeah.
workflow, especially just very general search, gathering requirements, discovering concrete links, doing kind of that work in tandem. And it's still kind of a pair programming experience because we're right there alongside it, kind of helping to guide it. And if you can really produce high quality issues with the core context and a lot of the requirements up front, then the actual hard part of generating really high quality code becomes a lot easier,
Yep.
and it shifts the burden much further forward in the pipeline, but the burden becomes smaller. Because if you really just give a generic issue to the Claude GitHub action, it could do anything. It's
Yeah.
truly a roll of the dice on whether it's going to do what you want or even touch. Generally it'll do what you want. It seems like the models are good enough now to do that, but whether it's going to be up to your standards or organizing things the way you want or pulling in the right dependencies, that is all just you're kind of leaving it up to the coding agent at that
Yeah.
moment, and it's going to spend a lot more time potentially doing things wrong if it's missing that context up front. So it's like, do you spend 5 minutes chatting with the agent to gather all that info, or you know, think about what you could produce in 5 minutes authoring a GitHub issue on your own, fully manual. You're probably going to get something much lower quality, and then garbage in, garbage out, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's like a good almost call to action of like where's the innovation in the context engineering? And it feels like we're like, I don't know, we're in a productive area of research and it's worth continuing to explore more here.
Totally. Well,
All
cool.
right. No,
Anything, any last words on your end?
No, that's a wrap. Really, really enjoying the voice models, and OpenAI just released a cheaper one, so probably we'll play around with that at some point. Probably also play around with like vibe coding a little GitHub Action Designer, because if that was really easy to use and we could save them and maybe publish a directory of them, like that could just be a neat little app that has some virality to it, and also makes it easier for us to make custom agents that run in GitHub Actions.
Totally. Yeah, I'm excited to see what you come up with there.
Cool.
Well, cool. Thanks for watching, folks. If you like this sort of thing, check us out at firstloop.ai. Jake publishes a newsletter weekly where we, dive into maybe some higher level concepts that are happening in the LLM space as well, as just demos like this. So we've got all sorts of resources. We're available for hire. If you made it this far, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you all next week.